So, I'm here at the Eiffel Tower of France. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights for 3 true scary ghost stories that happened in France.
Royalty? One of the only possible paranormal things that's happened to me took place in the Palace of Versailles. Last summer, I went on a trip throughout Europe with 2 of my best friends, and one of the places we decided we had to see was the Palace at Versailles. It's absolutely gorgeous and massive. There's a particular room in the palace that is lined on all walls by huge paintings of different battles and wars called the Museum of the History of France. If you go through the palace with an audio tour, it takes a long time to hear about every painting in the room, which means that the next room only gets a trickle of people at a time. Me and my 2 friends and 3 other people were in the room after the Mothof, listening to our audio guides. The 3 of us were sitting on a pretty little bench near the doors you enter the room through. The doors are about 8.5 feet tall, with heavy glass windows in them and made of solid wood. They're also thin because each doorway has 2 French doors instead of 1 large door. As we sat there, all of a sudden, this huge heavy door swung shut with such force that it bounced off the door frame. I feel I should mention that Versailles has no air conditioning because it's a few hundred years old, so it's not blown shut by an AC vent. There were no windows in the Mothof, and no windows close enough to have an effect on the door in the second room. As soon as it moved, I got up to see if some unsupervised kid had pushed it or something, but there weren't any in the Mothof, and there was no other person close enough to have accidentally nudged it like that. I personally opened and shut the door to feel how heavy it was. That door wasn't going anywhere without some force behind it. While this is really only a door moving, and a small potato compared to so many other people's experiences on here, I love it. Sometimes I feel like the only female in my family who doesn't get to experience the paranormal firsthand is me. But that time I did, and it just happened to be in one of the most historically steep and royal places in the world. Ghostly visits on a rainy night. I had an interesting experience this summer in France. I was trying to get to sleep alone in a tent on a very stormy night. I was a little jumpy because the rain was coming down in such hard torrents, and I wasn't very confident my tent was not going to collapse. As I was finally falling asleep, I became convinced there was a man outside my tent. I had an image of his walking alongside it outside. I grew more and more anxiety-ridden. Suddenly, it was as if there was a man, a soldier, on top of me. He was holding me down with his entire body and using a hand to cover my mouth as I struggled from beneath him. He spoke quickly in another language. German? I've only had 1 semester of it, so I'm hesitant to pinpoint it as such. It was dreamlike in the sense that I couldn't really move or scream, which if this sort of thing really happened, I am absolutely positive I would have no trouble doing either. Then, I woke myself up with my own cries and gasps, and I was there alone in my tent and just fine. I slept there for 6 other weeks with no other incidences. I'm an archaeologist. It was our field camp. Though someone with a tent nearby mine got up one morning about 2 a.m. or so to urinate and claimed he saw a figure pacing the end of the field we were camped in, along the edge of some woods, I guess. Actually, that was where around my tent was. One other girl, with a tent a bit further down from mine, also claimed that at one point she felt some sort of presence, and an unpleasant one at that, who made her uncomfortable outside her tent. I almost always have unpleasant, often disturbing dreams, but this was by far the most vivid. I didn't realize I had even fallen asleep until I woke up. I think that I dreamed and experienced may be related to the other 2 incidences that occurred in the camp. French beach house hauntings. Over the summer, my husband, my 2 kids, and I spent our summer at my husband's grandparents' home on an island off the west coast of France. Their home is a charming little beach house built in the early 50s. It's located in a tiny fishing village. There have been no deaths in the home or on the beach near the house. However, we experience very unusual activity at both sites regularly. My first experience happened on the second day of our vacation. It was night outside, and my children were out in the front yard when I suddenly heard my name being called excitedly. I rushed out to find my son looking at something in the bushes. I went over to see what he was looking at, to see a frightened little hedgehog, which are very common in the area, hidden in the bush. It quickly scampered deeper into the shrub, which we later found out was his home. I quickly got my camera out and snapped pictures of the inside of the underwood to see if I could capture any photos of the hedgehog. While taking pictures of the yard, I started noticing things in the picture. Thick, black, smudge-like appearances showed in nearly every picture I captured. Keep in mind that I had the flash on, so it could have just been shadows, but the smudges would appear in the middle of the pictures where nothing could have gone in the way, so I am a little skeptical of this idea. After the encounter, my kids would spend most of their time near the bushes, hoping to see the little spike ball again. The next day, my family and I went out to the beach. We went at low tide because the ocean pulls back very far out, and you can explore the tide pools. We had fun studying the rich ecosystem of the area. The area is inhabited by many crabs, sea snails, hermit crabs, oysters, and many more little sea creatures which I don't know the name of. We spent many hours there and played until the tide took over the rocks. Exhausted, we walked home and fell asleep quickly. The next morning, I woke up early, very, very early actually, and set breakfast for my family. I went outside to have my coffee, which shocked me because I smelled an awful and very, very strong odor. It smelled like the sea and rotting seaweed. The house is very close to the beach, but there was no way that was the cause of the smell. And then I saw, outside the gate, a dead crab being infested by ants. In fact, I spotted 6 dead crabs in the front yard, most of them in and near the bushes. I was positive the kids didn't bring back any crabs from the tide pools, and there was no way 7 crabs walked from the beach to our house. I was very disturbed by this, and questioned my whole family about it afterwards. But this was just the start to the activities. Doors would slam extremely loud, and would open by themselves. While my children were sleeping, they would be awoken by loud scratchings on the doors. You could hear a woman laughing sometimes, and what sounded like an old man talking gibberish. My 12-year-old daughter would also complain of seeing flashes of people walking around the house. She was the most sensitive to the activity. She told me she had many apocalyptic dreams and was afraid to fall asleep. One day, she was taking pictures with her camera when she captured several orbs in almost every single picture she took. This is extremely rare, and when I looked over the pictures myself, I was shocked. One very interesting encounter happened while I was taking pictures of my kids playing in the tide pools. In 4 of the photos I took, a foggy figure was seen looming in the rocks. My daughter fussed of having a headache and ringing sound in her ear when she was around the area where I took the pictures. The rest of the vacation went on with much similar activity. I'm unsure of the reason behind the hauntings. If anyone has any idea, please feel free to share. My husband's grandparents had never talked about any paranormal experiences in their home. Even with these odd ordeals, we had a wonderful vacation and came home with many great memories. I'll try attaching some photos later.